Welcome to Strawberry Drama. Before embarking on this amazing story, subscribe to the channel, give it a like and share. The reflection in the mirror of the luxury penthouse bathroom in Gangnam revealed much more than the image of Choi Yoona. At 28, her delicate face showed the weight of contained tears, while her hands trembled holding the silver hairbrush, a gift from her grandfather on her 10th birthday, the last tangible memory she had of him, apart from the memories of a sheltered childhood in the traditional mansion in Busan. The sound of the suite door opening made her heart race. Lee Mi-ho, her husband of 3 years, entered the room without ceremony, his arrogant posture filling the room. We need to talk." His voice was cold, calculating, unlike the man she had fallen in love with during business school. "What exactly?" she asked, trying to keep her composure as she left the bathroom. I already knew the answer. The messages on his cell phone, which she had accidentally seen the week before, were still burned into her memory. "I want a divorce," Mi-ho declared, adjusting the Italian silk tie that she herself had given him on their last wedding anniversary. "Son Min-ah and I." "The cleaner," Yoona interrupted, her voice firmer than she had expected. Years of refined manners and discretion, inherited from her grandfather, almost dissolved at that moment. "She understands me," Mi-ho replied, as if that justified everything. "You have 2 hours to leave the apartment. Your belongings are already being packed by the moving team." The cruelty of the situation was almost surreal. Yoona looked out of the window at Seoul's skyscrapers, remembering the words of her grandfather, Kim Jae-sun. "Your true strength will never lie in what you have, but in who you are." For years, she lived as an ordinary woman, following her grandfather's wish to keep her protected from the greed that surrounded the Kim family. Only a small circle knew that she was the sole heir to the Kim Group, one of the largest conglomerates in Asia. Not even Mi-ho, whom she had met at university and married for love, knew her true identity. "You're right, Mi-ho," she said, surprising him. 2 hours are more than enough." In her closet, Yoona selected only the essentials: some clothes, important documents, and the silver brush. At the bottom of her jewelry drawer, she touched the sealed envelope her grandfather had given her before he passed away, with instructions to open it only when she was ready to take her true place in the world. While the moving team methodically emptied the apartment, Yoona called Park Ji-won, her grandfather's personal secretary and confidant, who knew her true identity. "I'm coming home," was all she said. As she left the building, she found Min-ah waiting in the lobby, her cleaning uniform replaced by an expensive dress, probably a gift from Mi-ho. The smug smile on her face disappeared when Yoona walked past her with her head held high, showing no sign of defeat. The driver sent by Ji-won was waiting for her in a discreet black van. During the journey to Busan, Yoona finally opened her grandfather's envelope. Inside, as well as documents proving her position as heiress to the Kim Group, there was a letter. "My dear Yoona, if you are reading this, the moment I have feared and waited for has arrived. I have protected you from the business world and the greed that has destroyed so many lives in our family. But I always knew that one day you would take your place by your own merit, not by obligation or circumstance. Your strength lies not in the name Kim or in the shares in the company, but in the heart you inherited from your mother and the determination you have always shown, even in the little things. The mansion and everything I own now are yours. Use it wisely. With love, your grandfather." On arriving at the imposing traditional mansion in Busan, with its meticulously tended gardens and architecture that blended modern and classical elements, Yoona was greeted by Ji-won and the team who had kept the property spotless since her grandfather's death 6 months earlier. "Welcome back, Miss Kim," Ji-won said, using her real surname for the first time. That night, alone in her grandfather's office, Yoona began to plan her transformation, not for revenge against Mi-ho, but to honor her family's legacy and prove to herself that her true strength had always been there, waiting for the right moment to blossom. The next day, the headlines of Korea's leading business newspapers would announce, "Mysterious Kim Group heiress takes control of business empire." Meanwhile, in his apartment in Gangnam, Lee Mi-ho would watch the news in astonishment, belatedly recognizing the woman he had just lost not only as his ex-wife, but as one of the most powerful people in Asia. In her new room at the mansion, Yoona put the silver brush on the dressing table and looked at her reflection once more. Now her eyes showed not sadness but determination. The road ahead would be challenging, But for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home, ready to write her own story. Sunlight penetrated through the windows of the Kim Group's main office. On the 50th floor of the imposing skyscraper in Busan, Yoona watched over the port city as Park Ji-won introduced the company's top executives. Dressed in an elegant pinstripe suit in Louboutin heels, she emanated an aura of natural authority that surprised even the most skeptical directors. As you can see from the reports, Ji-won continued his presentation. Mr. Kim has kept Miss Yoona informed about all aspects of the business through weekly reports for the past 5 years. The executives exchanged surprised glances. What appeared to be just another unprepared heiress taking over by blood right turned out to be a meticulous strategist. During her seemingly ordinary life, Yoona had studied every aspect of her grandfather's business empire. "Gentlemen," Yoona finally spoke up, her voice calm but assertive. "I intend to implement significant changes in the next quarter. Our first priority will be to expand into the green technology market in Southeast Asia." In the meeting room, the chief financial officer, Young Hae-jin, a middle-aged man who had faithfully served his grandfather for decades, smiled discreetly. He recognized in Yoona the same strategic vision that had made Kim Jae-sung a business legend. Meanwhile, in Seoul, Lee Mi-ho was facing his own crisis. Sitting in his office at the small consulting firm he ran, he repeatedly watched the news about the mysterious heiress of the Kim Group. The image of Yoona, his ex-wife, now wearing designer clothes and running a billion-dollar empire, seemed surreal. "Mr. Lee," his secretary interrupted his thoughts. "Miss Song-min is on the phone. It's the third time today." Mi-ho dismissed the call with a gesture. His relationship with men was already showing cracks. The charm of novelty had quickly dissipated, replaced by the reality of a woman who hoped to enjoy the same lifestyle that Yoona discreetly maintained. Back in Busan, Yoona was having lunch with Ji-won at the traditional restaurant her grandfather frequented. Located in a historic alleyway in the city, "Your grandfather would be proud," Ji-won commented, pouring tea. "But I worry about your health. You've hardly rested since you took over." "There's so much to do, Ji-won," Yoona replied, tasting the kimchi that the chef had prepared especially for her. "Besides, work is the best medicine for a broken heart." Speaking of which, Ji-won hesitated. "Lee Mi-ho has been trying to arrange a meeting through various contacts. He found out about the expansion project in Gangnam and wants to introduce your company as a consultant." Yoona put down her hashies gently. "Interesting. Arrange the meeting for next week at the Seoul office." "Are you sure?" Ji-won asked worriedly. "Absolutely. It's time to show Lee Mi-ho that the woman he knew still exists, but she's not the same anymore." Over the next few days, Yoona immersed herself even more in her work. Between meetings with international investors and visits to the group's subsidiaries, she began to implement subtle but significant changes to the corporate culture. She installed a creche in the company building, implemented more generous parental leave policies, and started a mentoring program for female employees in leadership positions. In her spare time, which was scarce, Yoona found peace in the gardens of her grandfather's mansion. There, tending to the orchids he loved so much, she allowed herself to relive childhood memories. It was during one of these moments that she received an unexpected visitor. "Miss Kim," one of the security guards interrupted her. "Mrs. Lee Seo-yen is here." The name made Yoona freeze. Mi-ho's mother, a well-known socialite in Seoul, had always treated her with veiled disdain during their marriage, considering her unsuitable for her only son. "Make her come in," Yoona decided, adjusting her casual silk dress. Seo-yen appeared in the garden like an apparition, her impeccably made-up face contorted into an expression of false cordiality. "Yoona dear, or should I say Miss Kim?" "Miss Lee," Yoona greeted her with a polite curtsy. "To what do I owe the honor?" "I've come to make an appeal." Seo-yen got straight to the point. "Mi-ho made a mistake. He realizes it now. As a mother, I can't watch my son miss such a significant opportunity." Yoona looked at the woman who had made her feel inferior for years. "Mrs. Lee, I'm afraid you've made a journey in vain. Your values and mine have always been very different. That hasn't changed with my surname or bank account." "You don't understand," Seo-yen insisted, her mask of politeness beginning to crack. "Our family has important connections. We could be very useful to the Kim Group's business." How was I useful when I had to leave the apartment in 2 hours? Yuna asked softly, but her words carried the weight of all the hurt she had accumulated. That evening, alone in her office at the mansion, Yuna reviewed the documents for the expansion project in Gangnam. The land she planned to buy was next to the building where she had lived with Miho. It was there that she would build not only a new business complex, but also a cultural and educational center for young entrepreneurs. True strength lies in turning pain into purpose, her grandfather used to say. Now finally, she fully understood the meaning of those words. The meeting with Lee Miho was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Kim Group's office in Seoul. Yuna adjusted her channel red blazer as the elevator rose to the 45th floor. Next to her, Ji-won was reviewing the day's agenda on his tablet. He's already waiting in the meeting room, informed Ji-won. And he's brought his entire consulting team. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. It was typical of Miho to try to impress with numbers. Let's keep them waiting for another 10 minutes, she instructed, heading for her office first. Through the glass walls she could see Miho fidgeting, repeatedly adjusting his navy blue tie, the same nervous habit he had when he lied during his marriage. Next to him, his team of 5 consultants were organizing elaborate presentations and graphics. When Yuna finally entered the meeting room, the impact was immediate. Miho stood up abruptly, knocking over a folder of documents. His eyes ran over the elegant figure of his ex-wife, so different from the woman he had thrown out of the house weeks ago. Good afternoon, Mr. Lee, Yuna greeted formally, taking a seat at the head of the table. Please begin your presentation. For the next hour, Miho tried to demonstrate his expertise in the Gangnam real estate market, but his voice trembled slightly every time his eyes met Yuna's. She kept her expression professional, making a note of the fact that she was a professional. She maintained her professional expression, making occasional notes, and with our local experience, Miho concluded, we can guarantee that the Cultural Center project will be a success. Interesting, Yuna replied, closing her folder. But I'm afraid your proposal is not compatible with our vision. Yuna, Miho began, forgetting business protocol. I know I've made mistakes, but… Miss Kim, she corrected him gently. And yes, you did make mistakes. The biggest one was assuming that I was only what you saw on the surface. At that moment, the doors to the room opened and Mena walked in unannounced, her face contorted in fury. So it's true, she shouted. You're the heiress of the Kim Group. Ji-won immediately signaled for security, but Yuna held up her hand, stopping them. Miss Song, what a surprise! Still keeping up your old habits of entering uninvited? Mena advanced towards the table. You've been deceiving us all this time, living like a simple housewife when in fact I chose to live according to my own values. Yuna added, standing up calmly. Gentlemen, the meeting is adjourned. Our legal team will contact the selected companies by the end of the week. As the room emptied, Miho stood still, his face a mask of regret and frustration. Yuna, please. You know, Miho, she said, organizing her papers, you taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes we need to lose everything to find out who we really are. That evening, in her temporary apartment in Seoul, Yuna found a package waiting for her. Inside was an old photo album and a letter from Madam Park, the housekeeper who had looked after her at the mansion during her childhood. The photographs showed precious moments with her grandfather, tea ceremony lessons, walks in the garden, reading sessions in the library. In one of them, dated her 10th birthday, she was holding the silver brush, smiling next to her grandfather. Your mother would be proud, Madam Park's letter said. She also chose her own path, even when everyone said it was wrong. The mention of her mother brought back long-held memories. Kim Min-jae had been a talented pianist who fell in love with the music teacher. Against her family's wishes, she married him and lived a modest life until her untimely death in an accident when Yuna was just 5 years old. A knock at the door interrupted her musings. It was Ji-won, carrying folders with the day's latest reports. The lawyers have finished analyzing the proposals, she said. Mr. Lee's company doesn't qualify on any of the technical criteria. As expected, Yuna replied, pouring tea for them both. He's always been better at presentation than substance. There's one more thing, Ji-won hesitated. We've received an interesting proposal from the Zhang Corporation in Hong Kong. They want to discuss a possible partnership in the green technology project. Yuna knew the reputation of Zhang Corporation and its young CEO Zhang Wei. The company was known for its sustainable practices and technological innovation. Schedule a video conference for next week, she decided. And G1, prepare a trip to Hong Kong for the end of the month. I think it's time we expanded our horizons. As night fell over Seoul, Yuna gazed out at the city through the window of her apartment. Somewhere downstairs, Miho was probably trying to explain to Men Ah why his company wouldn't get the $1 million contract it had been promised. But Yuna's thoughts were already elsewhere, focused on the future she was beginning to build. Her grandfather had always said that business was like a game of baduk. Every move had to be strategic, thinking several moves ahead. Now, sitting in her makeshift office, surrounded by reports and projects, she finally understood. Her life so far had only been the beginning of the game. The pieces were in place, and it was her turn to make the next move. The trip to Hong Kong brought Yuna a new perspective. From the top of Zhang Corporation's office in the heart of the Central District, the view of Victoria Bay was breathtaking. Zhang Wei, the young 32-year-old CEO, proved to be different from the traditional executives she used to meet. Miss Kim, your proposal for renewable energy is fascinating, commented Wei, pouring tea into delicate porcelain cups. Especially the integration with artificial intelligence technology for resource optimization. Yuna realized that Wei shared her vision of the future. During the presentation, he asked insightful questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of the sector. His presence was striking, but without the arrogance typical of the heirs he had met. The next step would be to establish a joint research center. Yuna suggested, presenting detailed slides on her tablet. Busan has one of the best technology universities in Asia. The meeting lasted all day, and Wei insisted on taking her to dinner at a traditional restaurant in Wan Chai. The place, tucked away in a historic alley, was reminiscent of the restaurant she used to go to with her grandfather. My father used to bring me here, Wei commented as they sampled dim sum. He used to say that the best deals are made where the food has history. Dinner flowed naturally from business discussion to more personal conversations. Wei revealed that, like her, he had lived a life away from the limelight before taking over the family business. I spent 3 years working as a teacher in a rural school in China, he shared. My father thought I was crazy, but it was there that I learned the true value of what we do. Back at the hotel, Yuna found several messages from G1. The news of his meeting with Zhang Corporation had already leaked to the Korean press, and speculation about a possible merger was spreading fast. Among the messages, one caught his eye. Miho had given an interview to a business magazine, claiming that his divorce from Yuna had been amicable, and that he had always known her true identity. Typical, she muttered to herself, deleting the message. On the balcony of her suite, watching the lights of Hong Kong, Yuna reflected on how her life had changed in such a short time. Her phone rang. It was Madam Park. Miss, I found something in your mother's old room that you need to see. Her voice conveyed urgency. It's about the accident. Yuna's heart raced. The accident that had taken her parents' lives had always been a delicate subject, surrounded by mysteries that her grandfather seemed reluctant to discuss. I'll be back tomorrow on the first flight, she replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. The next morning, during breakfast at the hotel, Wei surprised her by showing up unannounced. I hear you're going back to Busan today, he said, taking a seat at her table. I'd like to accompany you. We have some details of the project to discuss, and I prefer to do it in person. Wei's presence was comforting, especially considering Madam Park's disturbing news. During the flight, they refined the details of the partnership, but Yuna noticed how he sensed her unease. Something worries you besides business, he observed, offering her a handmade chocolate he had brought back from a traditional Hong Kong confectionery. Sometimes the past surprises us when we least expect it, she replied vaguely, thanking him for the gesture. When they arrived in Busan, they were met by Ji-won at the airport. Madam Park is waiting at the mansion, she quietly informed Yuna. And there are reporters in front of the main office. The news of the partnership with Zhang Corporation has caused quite a stir. Wei noticed the urgency in Ji-won's voice. Why don't we leave office matters until tomorrow? He suggested. I can see a bit of the city today. Yuna silently thanked him for understanding. At the mansion, Madame Park was waiting for her in the library, holding an old wooden box. "I found this behind your mother's piano," she explained, her hands shaking slightly as she opened the box. Inside was a diary and several old photographs, but what caught Yuna's eye was a yellowed envelope with the letterhead of a private detective. "Your mother was investigating something in the weeks before the accident," Madame Park revealed, her voice low as if she feared being overheard. "She mentioned irregularities in some of the company's dealings, but never went into detail." Yuna sat down heavily in a leather armchair, the weight of this revelation pressing down on her chest. The accident that had killed her parents had always seemed strange. A perfectly maintained car losing its brakes on a coastal road. "There's one more thing," Madame Park continued hesitantly. "The name of the private investigator. He's still alive, and he lives here in Busan." At that moment, a soft knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Wei, looking slightly embarrassed for interrupting. "Sorry, but I thought you should know. Lee Miho is giving a press conference in Seoul at the moment. He's announcing a supposed partnership between his consulting company and the Zhang Corporation." Yuna exchanged a meaningful glance with Wei, who immediately understood the situation. "Don't worry," he assured her. "I've already instructed our press office to deny any association." Night fell over Busan, bringing with it more questions than answers. While Wei returned to his hotel, promising to meet her the next morning to finalize the contracts, Yuna remained in the library, her mother's diary in her hands, ready to uncover long-buried secrets. Her mother's diary revealed much more than Yuna had expected. Sitting in the mansion's library, the yellowed pages told a story that her grandfather had never mentioned. Kim En-jae, her mother, was not only a talented pianist, she had discovered serious irregularities in the Kim Group's international subsidiaries weeks before her death. "Something is wrong with the figures for the Singapore subsidiary," said a note dated 3 days before the accident. "Young Tae-won knows more than he's letting on." The name made Yuna straighten up in her chair. Young Tae-won was the company's current financial director, the same one who had shown so much support when she took over. Her hands shook slightly as she turned the page. "Miss Kim," Ji-won interrupted her thoughts, hurrying into the library. "Jean Wei is on the phone. It sounds urgent." Yuna answered, still absorbing the revelations in the diary. Wei's voice sounded tense. "I've just received an interesting proposal from Lee Miho's company. He's trying to sell information about the Kim Group." "What kind of information?" Yuna asked, her heart racing. "Old documents, mainly from your grandfather's time, specifically about transactions in Singapore in the 1990s. The coincidence was too disturbing to ignore. Yuna arranged to meet Wei for breakfast the next day at the Park Hyatt Busan. After hanging up, she turned her attention to the private investigator's envelope. The investigator, Kon Dae-sun, still maintained a modest office in Busan's historic district. A quick search revealed that he had specialized in corporate cases before taking partial retirement. The next morning, breakfast with Wei in the hotel restaurant overlooked the harbor. As they discussed the latest developments, Yuna noticed how genuinely worried he seemed. "Miho isn't acting alone," Wei commented, pouring more coffee. "Someone with inside access must be providing this information." "I agree," Yuna replied, sharing her findings about the diary. "And I suspect it's connected to what my mother discovered 23 years ago." Wei leaned forward, his expression serious. "Let me help. The Zhang Corporation has resources that could be useful in this investigation." Before Yuna could reply, her cell phone vibrated with a message from Madame Park. "Investigator Kong has agreed to see us this afternoon." Kong Dae-sung's office was an interesting contrast to Busan's modern skyscrapers. Located in an old brick building, it retained the charm of 50s film noir. "I've never forgotten your mother's case," Kong said after the introductions. His wrinkled face bore the weight of decades of secrets. "It was the only one I left unfinished." "Why?" Yuna asked, sitting down in a worn leather chair. "Because your grandfather personally asked me to stop the investigation the day after the accident," he replied, removing an old folder from a metal filing cabinet. "But I kept my notes." The information Kong shared was disturbing. There was evidence of an elaborate network of shell companies in Singapore, all connected to Kim Group executives. More alarmingly, bank documents showed suspicious transfers days before the crash. Your mother was about to present this evidence to the board, Kong explained, his voice low. The meeting was scheduled for the day after the accident. Back at the mansion, Yuna found Wei waiting in the garden. She had shared some of her findings by message, and he had immediately flown over from Hong Kong to offer support. We need to be strategic, Wei warned as they walked among the orchids. If this information is correct, we're dealing with people who have already proven themselves. Yuna stopped in front of a bed of purple orchids, her mother's favorites. I can't just ignore this, Wei. I need to know the truth. And you will, he assured her, gently touching her shoulder. But this time you're not alone. That evening, while working in her office, Yuna received an unexpected call from Song Min-ah. His voice sounded nervous. We need to talk. It's about Miho and the documents he has on your family. The circle was starting to close. As night fell over Busan, Yuna realized that the stakes were much higher than she had imagined. It wasn't just about inheritance or revenge. It was about justice, truth, and the legacy her mother died trying to protect. In her room later, she held the silver brush, remembering her grandfather's words. Sometimes protecting those we love means keeping painful secrets. Now she wondered if that secret hadn't cost her more than it should have. The meeting with Men-ah was arranged for a discreet cafe in Songnam, a satellite city of Seoul. Yuna chose the location strategically, away from the prying eyes of the press, but public enough to guarantee her safety. Wei insisted on accompanying her, remaining at a distant table with Ji-won. Men-ah arrived on time, her face showing a mixture of nervousness and regret. She was wearing simpler clothes now, far from the artificial glamour she had tried to embody while with Miho. Thank you for seeing me, began Men-ah, her hands restless around her coffee cup. I know I don't deserve your attention after all. You mentioned documents, Yuna replied directly, keeping her voice calm but firm. Men-ah looked around before continuing. Miho has been acting strange over the last few weeks. I found a folder in his office with old documents from the Kim Group. There were reports about transactions in Singapore, dating back to the time of his parents' accident. Yuna's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. How did he get those documents? Young Tae-won, Min-ah whispered, leaning forward. I overheard their conversation on the phone. Tae-won promised more information in exchange for something, but I couldn't hear what. The mention of the financial director's name confirmed Yuna's suspicions. Her mother's notes, Investigator Kang's findings. Everything pointed to a bigger conspiracy than she had imagined. Why are you telling me this now? Yuna asked, carefully studying Min-ah's expression. Because... Min-ah hesitated, tears forming in her eyes. Because I found something about my father in the documents. He was working at the Singapore branch at the time of the accident. His name was on confidential reports, along with suspicious transfers. He committed suicide a week after your parents died. The revelation hit Yuna like a punch. One more piece of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a dark pattern of connected events. After the meeting, Wei joined Yuna in her car. Do you believe her? He asked as the driver took them back to Seoul. Yes, Yuna replied, looking out of the window at the city lights. The pain in her eyes was genuine, and it explains why she approached Miho, perhaps unconsciously seeking answers about her own past. Back at the Kim Group office, Yuna assembled a small trusted team. Wei Ji-won and investigator Kong, who had agreed to come out of retirement to help with the case. The documents Men-ah mentioned could be crucial, Kong explained, spreading out his old notes on the table. But we need to be careful. If young Tae-won is really involved, he must have been keeping parallel records all these years. He's always been meticulous, Ji-won added. He worked directly with his grandfather for decades. No one would question his authority over old documents. Wei, who had remained silent, analyzing the data on his tablet, raised his head. I've just received some interesting information from our team in Singapore. The former Kim Group subsidiary was recently sold, but the physical archives are still in a local warehouse. We need those files, Yuna decided. But if we make an official request, we'll alert the wrong people. Leave that to me, Wei offered. Jean Corporation has regular operations in Singapore. I can organize a discreet visit to the warehouse. While they were discussing the details of the operation, Yuna received an unexpected message from Madam Park. "I found something else in your mother's room. A bank vault key." The next day dawned with bombshell news. Lee Miho had been rushed to hospital after an alleged car accident. The circumstances were suspiciously similar to the accident that had killed Yuna's parents. "It's no coincidence," Kong said when Yuna shared the news. "Someone is sending a message." Wei immediately reinforced security around Yuna and organized a team to protect Men Ah. The siege was closing in, and those responsible for her parents' deaths seemed willing to silence anyone who threatened to expose the truth. At the hospital, Miho was stable but unconscious. Yuna decided to visit him, ignoring the protests of his security team. In the hospital room, she met his mother, Seo Yun, who greeted her with surprise. "Do you still care about him after everything?" Seo Yun asked, her usual arrogance replaced by genuine concern. "I didn't come for him," Yuna answered honestly. "I came because I need to stop more people getting hurt because of secrets from the past." On leaving the hospital, Yuna received a call from Wei. "The documents in Singapore. Someone got there before us. The warehouse caught fire during the night. The game had changed. It was no longer just about finding out the truth, it was about surviving to tell it." As her car drove through the streets of Seoul, Yuna realized that every step towards the truth also brought her closer to the danger that had cost her parents their lives. The key to the bank safe found by Madam Park led Yuna to the Busan International Finance Center one rainy morning. Wei insisted on accompanying her, his silent presence offering comfort as she followed the bank manager through the marble corridors. "This vault hasn't been accessed for over 20 years, the manager informed her, checking his records. "It was rented in the name of Kim Min-jae." The safe revealed more than documents. It contained a sealed box with an old-fashioned USB stick and a letter addressed to Yuna. Her mother's elegant handwriting made her heart squeeze. "Dear daughter, if you are reading this, it means that my suspicions were correct. What I found out about the operations in Singapore puts everyone at risk. Just trust Park Ji-won, she knows more than she seems to." Wei watched Yuna with concern as she put the letter away. "We need a specialized technician to access that USB stick. The technology is old." At the hospital, Miho had finally woken up. His first visit was surprising. Young Tae-won showed up in his room late at night, unaware that security cameras discreetly installed by Wei's team were capturing everything. "Were the documents destroyed?" Tae-won asked anxiously. "The accident. It wasn't an accident, was it?" Miho replied with another question, his voice weak. "Concentrate on recovering," Tae-won cut in dryly. "And forget all about Singapore." At the Kim mansion, Ji-won revealed his own connection to the past. "I was a junior assistant at the time of the accident," he confessed to Yuna and Wei. "Your mother came to me days before, asking me to keep copies of some documents. But after her death, your grandfather made me promise never to mention it." "Why would my grandfather cover up something like that?" Yuna asked, frustrated. "To protect you," a familiar voice replied. Madam Park entered the office, carrying an old diary. "Your grandfather discovered that there were too many powerful people involved, people who wouldn't hesitate to harm a child." The USB stick revealed coded files that took days to decipher. While experts were working on it, Wei received disturbing news from Hong Kong. "Sean Corporation is suffering cyber attacks," he reported. "Someone is trying to access our servers, specifically files related to the Kim Group." Pressure was mounting from all sides. Men Ah, after his revelation about his father, began to collaborate actively, providing details of the conversations he had witnessed between Miho and Tae-won. They mentioned something about a project called Phoenix, she recounted during a secret meeting at a Buddhist temple in the mountains of Busan, and a man called Yamamoto. The name made Ji-won turn pale. Yamamoto was the contact in Tokyo who coordinated the Singapore operations. Wei immediately activated his contacts in Japan. Within hours, they discovered that Yamamoto was still living in Tokyo, retired but still connected to the Asian financial underworld. "I need to go to Tokyo," Yuna decided, ignoring the protests of her security team. "Not alone," Wei said, his tone brooking no argument. "I have a safe apartment in Roppongi. We can use it as a base." The trip to Tokyo was planned meticulously. Meanwhile, the files on the USB stick finally began to reveal their secrets. They were detailed records of an elaborate money laundering network involving the Kim Group, Japanese corporations, and banks in Singapore. His mother discovered that some of the money was funding illegal activities, explained Khan, analyzing the data, influence peddling, bribery of government officials. In Wei's apartment in Tokyo, overlooking the Tokyo Tower, Yuna was studying the documents when she received a cryptic message from Miho. "I'm sorry for everything. There are more people involved than we realize, including your own family." Before she could fully decipher the meaning of the message, Ji-won called with alarming news from Busan. Someone has broken into Investigator Kang's office. All the files were taken and he what? Yuna asked, her heart racing. "He's missing," Ji-won added, his voice trembling. "And there's more. Young Tae-won has requested an emergency board meeting for tomorrow." Wei, who was listening to the conversation, immediately started making calls. "I can have a jet ready in an hour," he offered. "We need to get back to Busan." But Yuna knew that fleeing now would mean losing the only chance of finding Yamamoto. "You go back," she decided. "I need to stay and find out what Yamamoto knows." The night in Tokyo seemed different from the others, denser, more threatening. From the top of her apartment in Roppongi, Yuna watched the city lights as she waited to hear from her contacts about Yamamoto's whereabouts. Her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. An old photo showing her grandfather, Yamamoto, and a third man she immediately recognized, Minho's father. The truth was beginning to take shape, darker and more complex than she had imagined. It wasn't just about illegal financial transactions or corporate corruption. It was about a web of loyalties, betrayals, and secrets that had cost lives and continued to threaten more. In her hands, the silver brush of her 10th birthday seemed to weigh more than ever, laden with the weight of truth still unrevealed and promises of justice still unfulfilled. The night in Tokyo was slowly revealing its secrets. Yuna adjusted her coat as she followed the instructions sent by an anonymous contact who promised to take her to Yamamoto. The streets of Asakusa, traditionally busy during the day, took on a mysterious air under the light of the red lanterns. "Miss Kim," an elderly voice called out in perfect Korean. A short, curvy man emerged from the shadows of an ancient temple. "I'm Tanaka, Yamamoto-san's personal assistant for 30 years." The meeting had been arranged through a complex network of contacts that Wei had established before returning to Busan. Tanaka led Yuna through narrow alleyways to a traditional ryokan hidden between modern buildings. "Yamamoto-san has been expecting you for a long time," Tanaka commented as they climbed the old wooden stairs. "Ever since I heard that you had taken over the Kim Group." The room where Yamamoto was waiting was decorated with elegant simplicity. The man, now in his 70s, maintained the impeccable posture that Yuna had recognized from the old photograph. His eyes, however, carried the weight of decades of secrets. "You have your mother's eyes," were his first words in careful Korean, "and the same determination. Why did you help cover up the truth about her death?" Yuna asked directly, taking a seat at the offered zabuton. Yamamoto poured some green tea in antique pottery before answering. "Your mother discovered something bigger than illegal transactions. The Phoenix Project wasn't just about money laundering. It was about political power in 3 countries. Meanwhile, in Busan, Wei was facing his own battle. The emergency board meeting called by young Tae-won was about to start. Ji-won had discovered that Tae-won was planning a vote to remove Yuna from the presidency, alleging emotional instability and decisions detrimental to the company. The documents his mother gathered, Yamamoto continued, proved the involvement of powerful politicians in Korea, Japan, and Singapore. Minho's father was just a middleman who knew too much. "What about my grandfather?" Yuna asked, her heart squeezing. Kim Jae-sung found out too late. When he realized the extent of the conspiracy, his only concern was to protect you. That's why he kept your identity a secret all these years. Yuna's phone vibrated with an urgent message from Wei. Tae-won presented forged documents to the council. "We need you here in 24 hours. Yamamoto observed the concern on Yuna's face. "I have something your mother entrusted me with," she said, getting up with difficulty. From a safe hidden behind a panel, he took out an old folder. "These are the originals that prove each person's involvement in the Phoenix Project. Your mother brought them here days before the accident, suspecting that your life was in danger. In Seoul, Miho received an unexpected visitor in his hospital room. Mina, now protected by Wei security team, brought new information. "I found this in my father's apartment," she said, handing over a diary. He documented everything in the months before he died, even about the sabotage on Yuna's parents' car. Back in Tokyo, Yuna was studying the documents when Tanaka burst into the room. "You need to leave now. Suspicious men have been spotted in the neighborhood." Yamamoto quickly put some documents in a folder. "Take the back passage. Tanaka will take you to safety. And Yuna, your mother was right about Young Tae-won. He wasn't just an accomplice, he was the architect of it all." On the way to Haneda Airport, Yuna received a call from Ji-won. "Investigator Kong has been found." His voice trembled. "He's in hospital, but he managed to give me something before he lost consciousness." They're old photos of Young Tae-won with politicians in Singapore. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together. The Phoenix Project was an elaborate political and economic influence operation, using the Kim Group as a front for illegal movements of money and power. "Yamamoto-san is right," Tanaka commented as he drove. "Tae-won was known in Tokyo circles as the architect. Nothing happened without his approval." At the airport, before boarding the flight to Busan, Yuna made one last call to Wei. "I need you to prepare something for me," she instructed. "When I arrive, we'll give Young Tae-won exactly what he's been waiting for. A chance to show his true face." The Japanese night parted with a fine drizzle as the plane took off. In the documents Yamamoto had handed over, Yuna found a photo her mother had kept. Her at the age of 5, smiling next to the piano, holding the silver brush she now carried as a talisman. Past and present converged in a complex web of loyalty, betrayal and redemption. As the plane cut through the sky towards Busan, Yuna knew that the next 24 hours would not only determine her future, but would reveal truths buried by 2 decades of silence. The flight from Tokyo to Busan seemed endless, as Yuna meticulously studied the documents provided by Yamamoto. Each page revealed a new layer of the conspiracy that had cost her parents their lives. Her mother's detailed notes showed a clear pattern of suspicious transfers and secret meetings, all connected to Young Tae-won. Wei was waiting for her at Gimhae Airport, his normally serene face marked by worry. "The council is scheduled for 10 a.m., he informed her as they made their way to the car. "Tae-won got significant support from the shareholders." "How long do we have until then?" Yuna asked, checking her watch. "For hours," Wei replied. "Ji-won is preparing everything according to your instructions." At the Kim mansion, the reinforced security team stood guard while Mena shared the latest findings from her father's diary. "He documented specific meetings," she explained, pointing to underlined dates, "including a week before your parents' accident." Miho, still recovering but determined to help, participated via video conference from the hospital. Tae-won regularly visited the Singapore branch in the 1990s, he revealed, always on dates that coincided with big international transfers. Investigator Khan, although still hospitalized, had managed to send crucial information through his team. Old photos showed Tae-won in private meetings with prominent politicians in 3 different countries, always mediating negotiations that benefited Project Phoenix. "The plan needs to be perfect," Yuna said, gathering her team in the mansion's office. "Tae-won is too meticulous to make obvious mistakes." Wei nodded, sharing files on his tablet. Jean Corporation has traced the cyber attacks. They all originated from servers in Singapore, the same ones used for Project Phoenix transactions. Ji-won rushed in, carrying more documents. "The board is restless. 3 directors have already expressed their support for Tae-won publicly." "Let them," Yuna replied, a plan forming in her mind. "The more confident he is, the more vulnerable he'll be." Over the next 2 hours, the Kim mansion turned into an operations center. While the technical team prepared digital evidence, Yuna met privately with Wei in the Winter Garden. "Do you understand that this could be dangerous?" he asked, his concern evident. "Tae-won has already proven himself." "My parents died searching for the truth," Yuna replied, unconsciously touching the silver brush in her pocket. "I can do no less." At the hospital, Miho was visited by his mother, Seo Yun, who was finally beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. Young Tae-won often visited our house when you were a child, she revealed. He always took a special interest in your career. The revelation added another piece to the puzzle. Tae-won had manipulated not just business, but people, cultivating strategic relationships for decades. At 9:30 a.m., Yoona arrived at the Kim Group's main building. Dressed in an impeccable black suit, she carried with her not only documents, but the weight of 2 decades of secrets and lies. The shareholders are arriving, Ji-won informed her, leading her into a private room. Tae-won is already in the building, meeting with his allies. Perfect, Yoona replied, checking her phone one last time. Confirmation messages from Wei, Min-ah, and the team in Singapore indicated that everything was in place. The boardroom on the 50th floor offered a panoramic view of Busan. As the members took their seats, Yoona noticed the varied expressions. Some anxious, others clearly hostile. Young Tae-won entered last, his usual confidence even more pronounced. For a moment his eyes met Yoona's, and she saw something familiar in them. The same calculating coldness her mother must have faced years ago. Gentlemen of the council, Tae-won began, his authoritative voice filling the room. We are here today to discuss the future of the Kim Group. Actually, Yoona interrupted him gently, we're here to discuss the past. With the gesture she activated the screens around the room. Documents, photos and bank records began to appear, telling a story that had been buried for too long. The color gradually drained from Tae-won's face as the evidence piled up. His mask of confidence began to crack, revealing the man who had orchestrated not just financial fraud, but personal tragedy. The confrontation that would follow would not only change the fate of the Kim Group, but would reveal truths that had remained in the shadows for far too long. The boardroom turned into a silent battlefield as the evidence continued to emerge on the screens. Young Tae-won remained outwardly composed, but his fingers drumming on the mahogany table betrayed his growing restlessness. As you can see, Yoona continued, her firm voice echoing through the room, Project Phoenix wasn't just a money laundering scheme. It was a systematic operation of political and economic manipulation that spanned 2 decades. Wei, strategically positioned near the door, watched the board members' reactions. Some paled as they recognized their own signatures on compromising documents. Others exchanged nervous glances, realizing the extent of their unwitting involvement. This is absurd. Tae-won finally interrupted, standing up. These accusations are clearly fabricated by an unstable heiress, trying to tarnish the reputation of loyal executives who have served this company for decades. Interesting you should mention loyalty, Yoona replied, gesturing to Ji-won. The assistant projected a new set of documents. These are the bank transfers made a week before the accident that killed my parents. All approved with your digital signature, Tae-won. The silence in the room became even denser. One of the older directors, Park Sun-ho, slowly removed his glasses, his expression a mixture of horror and understanding. The audit reports from 1998. Now it all makes sense. At that moment, the doors to the room opened. Min-ah entered carrying a red folder. Tae-won visibly shuddered at the sight of her. Miss Song, this is a private board meeting. She's here at my request, Yoona interjected. Min-ah, please share what you found in your father's diary. With slightly trembling hands, Min-ah began to read passages from the diary that revealed secret meetings, veiled threats and finally, Tae-won's direct order to solve the Kim Min-jae problem permanently. My father was used as a pawn, Min-ah declared, her voice breaking, and when he threatened to expose everything, he was silenced. His suicide was fate, just like Yoona's parents' accident. Tae-won laughed, but the sound came out forced. That's ridiculous. You have no concrete proof of any of this. Actually, we do, Wei interjected, motioning with his tablet. The Jean Corporation has tracked all of the Phoenix Project's digital transactions, including the recent attempts to erase records in Singapore. Ji-won projected a new document, a detailed confession by Yamamoto, recorded on video the night before in Tokyo. The former business partner meticulously described how the scheme worked and Tae-won's central role in its execution. It's over, Tae-won, Yoona declared softly. The police are already on their way, with search and seizure warrants for your residences in Seoul and Busan. The executive looked around the room, realizing he was cornered. His face transformed, the mask of civility completely abandoned. "You're just like your mother." He spat the words. She also thought she could change things with her naive morality. "My mother died protecting what she believed was right," Yuna replied, keeping her composure. "Just as my grandfather dedicated his last years to preparing me for this moment." Sirens began to sound in the distance, approaching the building. Taewon made a sudden move towards the door, but Wei and the security team were already in position. In his last moments of freedom, the executive turned to Yuna one last time. "You don't understand, do you? Some truths need to remain buried. The system we've built is bigger than all of us." "Maybe," Yuna agreed. "But today is the day we start to dismantle it." The next few hours were a whirlwind of statements, seizures and revelations. As the police led away Taewon and the other executives involved, the press began to gather in front of the Kim Group building. In the hospital, Miho watched the live coverage, his expression a mixture of admiration and regret. Beside him, his mother held his hand, finally understanding the true strength of the woman her son had lost. Wei found Yuna in his grandfather's office hours later. She was sitting in the old leather chair, the silver brush in her hands, gazing at the portrait of her parents on the wall. "The board voted unanimously to keep her as president," he informed her softly. "And investigations have already begun in Singapore and Tokyo." "There's still a lot of work to do," Yuna replied, turning to him. "The Phoenix project may be over, but its ramifications run deep." "You're not alone in this fight," Wei assured her, taking a seat in the armchair next to her. "The Jean Corporation is committed to helping with the restructuring." That evening at the Kim mansion, Yuna gathered her closest team for an intimate dinner. Min Ah, Ji-won, Wei and even Miho, who had been discharged from hospital, were present. It was a moment of reflection and new beginnings. As they served the traditional tea that her grandfather enjoyed so much, Yuna realized that there was something poetic about the way the truths finally came out. Like her mother before her, she had chosen to face the system not for revenge, but for justice. The news of young Taewon's arrest dominated international headlines. The Kim Group, once a symbol of traditional corporate power, was now seen as the protagonist of a revolution in Asian business. Yuna watched the media coverage on her tablet as her private jet crossed the sky towards Singapore. Wei, sitting next to her, was reviewing the latest reports from the joint audit between the Kim Group and Jean Corporation. "The ramifications of Project Phoenix are more extensive than we imagined," he commented, handing Yuna a few pages. "We found connections with at least 5 other Asian conglomerates. My grandfather always said that power and corruption grow like intertwined roots," Yuna replied, remembering Kim Jae-sung's wise words. "We need to be careful about exposing every connection." In Seoul, Min-ah was conducting his own investigation. Her father's diary had become the key to understanding the extent of the conspiracy. Each page revealed new names, dates, and places that helped the police unravel 2 decades of corporate crime. "I found something interesting," Min-ah said during a video conference with Yuna. "My father mentioned regular meetings at a Buddhist temple in Hong Kong. Apparently, it was a meeting place for exchanging important documents." The plane landed in Singapore under typical tropical rain. Yuna and Wei were met by Lisa Chan, a forensic investigator specializing in financial crimes. "The Kim Group's regional office has been thoroughly searched," she reported as she drove into the financial district. "We found a hidden safe in the basement. In the safe, they discovered decades of meticulously organized records. Taewon, in his obsession with control, had documented the Phoenix project's every move. He kept a parallel filing system," Lisa explained, showing color-coded folders. Each color represented a different level of illegal operations. Meanwhile, in Busan, Ji-won was coordinating the Kim Group's internal restructuring. The company needed to keep its operations running smoothly while dealing with the ongoing investigations. "The employees are scared," Yuna reported by phone. "Many have worked for years under Taewon without suspecting a thing." "Organize a general meeting," Yuna instructed. "We need to be transparent with our staff. They deserve to know the truth and understand that they won't be punished for the crimes of their superiors." At the hospital, Miho was being discharged. His physical recovery was complete, but the weight of the revelations about his unwitting involvement in the scheme still troubled him. "I want to help," he told Wei during a visit. "I know people who might have important information." Wei studied Yuna's ex-husband cautiously. Why? Why now? Because I realized too late that some things are more important than ambition, Miho replied, his voice carrying the weight of regret. And because Yuna deserves to see the full truth come out. In Singapore, Yuna and Wei spent days analyzing documents and connecting the dots. The work was exhausting, but each discovery brought them closer to understanding the true extent of Project Phoenix. I found something about your mother, Wei said one evening while they were working in the temporary office. She was investigating a connection with the Japanese government when Yuna raised her hand, interrupting him. In her hands was an old photo. Her mother, young and smiling, standing next to a group of executives in front of a temple in Kyoto. Among them was a familiar face, Wei's father. Did your father know my mother? He asked, surprise evident in his voice. Wei picked up the photo, his eyes wide in recognition. That explains why he was so insistent that Jean Corporation get involved in this investigation. He must have suspected something all these years. The discovery added a new layer of complexity to the story. Wei immediately called his father in Hong Kong, putting the call on speakerphone. It was a clean energy project, Zhongliang explained, his voice laden with memories. His mother, Yuna, was determined to turn the Kim Group into a green technology leader. But Tae-won and his associates saw a different opportunity in the project funds. As night fell over Singapore, Yuna watched the city from the top of the Marina Bay Sands. The lights reflected on the water reminded her of the stories her grandfather used to tell her about building an empire with purpose and integrity. It's not just about justice now, she told Wei, who joined her on the balcony. It's about realizing the dream my mother had for the company, turning the Kim Group into something that really benefits people. Wei nodded, realizing the weight of that moment. And this time you're not alone in that mission. The silver brush, Yuna's constant companion, shone under the city lights as a silent reminder that some inheritances go beyond fortunes and companies. They're about values, dreams, and the courage to fight for them. The discovery of the connection between Yuna's mother and Wei's father changed the dynamic of the investigation. In their temporary office in Singapore, the two spent hours going through old files on the clean energy project, trying to understand how a dream of sustainability had turned into a network of corruption. My father kept all these documents, Wei explained, spreading out plans and blueprints on the table. The solar energy complex was supposed to be built on Jeju. It was revolutionary for the time. Yuna studied the technical drawings carefully. The original plans revealed an impressive vision, a research and development center that would combine green technology with environmental preservation. Her mother had been a visionary, decades ahead of her time. In Busan, Ji-won was coordinating a series of structural changes at the Kim Group. The company was reinventing itself, returning to the core values that had been forgotten during the Tae-won era. The employees are responding positively, he reported during a video conference, especially after we announced the new program to encourage sustainable innovation. Min Ah, who had become an unexpected ally, worked tirelessly to organize the documents found in the Singapore vault. Her unique perspective as the daughter of one of the victims of the scam brought valuable insights to the investigation. I found something interesting, she communicated, sending scans of old documents. There was a parallel project in Okinawa. Apparently, while everyone was focusing on Jeju, Tae-won was diverting resources to a covert operation in Japan. Wei immediately recognized the pattern. Classic distraction tactic. While everyone was looking at the legitimate project in Jeju, the real transactions were taking place elsewhere. The investigation led them to Okinawa, where they discovered an abandoned structure that should have been a data processing center. The site, hidden among mountains, held old servers that still contained crucial information. It's amazing how Tae-won never destroyed those records, commented Lisa Chan, who accompanied them with her forensics team. Maybe it was his insurance in case something went wrong. While the technical team worked to recover the data, Yuna received an unexpected call from Miho. I remember something that might be important, he said, his voice carrying the weight of guilt. Years ago, Tae-won mentioned a project in Okinawa over dinner. He was drunk and talked about how some secrets needed to be buried on the island. The mention of buried secrets led the team to a disturbing discovery. Excavations on the site revealed physical documents in sealed containers, protected from deterioration. Among them was a notebook in Kim Min-jae's handwriting. "Mom was here," Yuna murmured, her hands trembling as she touched the yellowed pages. The notebook contained detailed observations about irregularities she had uncovered, including the names of politicians and businessmen involved in the scheme. Wei stood beside her as she read, offering silent support. Their relationship had deepened during the investigation, built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of the weight of family heirlooms. In Seoul, news of Tae-won's trial dominated the news. The former executive had tried to negotiate a plea bargain, but his information was selective, clearly protecting those involved. "He's still playing the game," observed Ji-won during a virtual meeting with the team. "Even in prison, he's trying to maintain control over the narrative." The discovery in Okinawa changed the game. The records found not only confirmed Kim Min-jae's suspicions, but also revealed a network of corruption that spanned 3 generations of politicians and businessmen. "That explains why my grandfather was so protective," Yuna commented to Wei as they flew over the East Sea back to Busan. "He knew that exposing the truth could cost more lives." In the Kim Group's main office, a new era was beginning to take shape. The clean energy projects dreamt up by Kim Min-jae 2 decades earlier were being resurrected with modern technology. The partnership with Zhong Corporation was expanding beyond research, creating a shared vision of a sustainable future. Miho, seeking redemption, offered valuable information about other executives involved in the scheme. His cooperation, albeit belated, helped dismantle remaining Project Phoenix cells in several Asian companies. The silver brush, always present on Yuna's desk, now carried a new meaning. It was not just a reminder of her past, but a symbol of transformation and renewal. Like precious metal that needs to be polished to maintain its shine, the truth also needs to be constantly maintained and protected. The Kim Group's transformation was in full swing when Yuna received an unexpected phone call from Yamamoto. The elderly Japanese man, now sheltered in a safe house in Kyoto, had discovered something that would change the course of the investigation. "Miss Kim, I found old records of an account in Macau." His voice trembled with urgency. "It was used by Tae-won for transfers that don't even appear in the Okinawa files." Wei, who accompanied Yuna to his office in Busan, immediately started making calls to his contacts in Macau. The city, known for its discreet banking system, could hold the last pieces of the Phoenix Project puzzle. "We need to go there," Yuna decided, already organizing her schedule with Ji-won. "If there's any more evidence, we need to find it before it's destroyed." In Seoul, Min-ah was continuing his own parallel investigation. His father's diary had revealed connections to a casino in Macau, frequented by Asian executives for secret meetings. "The Golden Dragon," she reported during a video conference. "It was where the real decisions of Project Phoenix were made." Miho, still seeking redemption, offered valuable information about the casino. "Tae-won took me there once years ago," she revealed. "There's a private room on the top floor called the Phoenix Room. Only select members have access." The flight to Macau was tense. Yuna studied documents while Wei finalized preparations with his local team. The city, a unique blend of Portuguese and Chinese cultures, held secrets that could finally expose the full extent of the corruption that had cost her parents their lives. At the Hotel Lisboa, a meeting place for Asia's business elite, Yuna and Wei set up their base of operations. The luxurious suite overlooked the Golden Dragon Casino, its neon lights flashing like a beacon of secrets on the night horizon. "I got access to the Phoenix Room for tonight," Wei informed him, adjusting his tie. "My father had an old partnership at the casino. The manager still owes me favors." Ji-won, coordinating operations from Busan, had prepared discrete identities for both of them. "The technical team is in place," he confirmed over the phone. "As soon as they enter the room, we'll have access to the security systems." The casino was a maze of luxury and excess, mirrors and gold everywhere. Yuna, in an elegant red dress, felt the weight of the silver brush in her party bag, her personal talisman for crucial moments. In the Phoenix Room, decorated with traditional Chinese motifs, they found more than they expected. Behind a sliding panel, they discovered a small but meticulously organized office. In the drawers, documents detailed 2 decades of illicit transactions. "That explains a lot," Wei muttered, discreetly photographing the files with a special device. Taewon kept parallel records of everything. It was his insurance against betrayal. A name on the documents caught Yuna's eye: Jean Mei Lin, Wei's late mother. She tried to expose the scheme, Yuna realized reading the notes. Along with my mother? Wei froze, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the document. Her mother had died in a car accident in Hong Kong. Weeks after Yuna's parents. The pattern was eerily familiar. Sudden movement in the corridor alerted them. Voices were approaching the Phoenix room. Among them, they recognized the heavily accented English of one of Taewon's key allies. Now CEO of a bank in Singapore, Wei quickly activated the listening system set up by the technical team. The voices became clear through the small device in his ear. Taewon's judgment is a problem, one voice said. He knows too much. He needs to be silenced before he decides to make a real deal with the prosecution. The Kim girl too, another voice replied. She's getting too close to the truth about Okinawa and Macau. Yuna and Wei exchanged tense glances. The conversation confirmed their suspicions. The Phoenix Project still had powerful protectors, people willing to kill to keep its secrets. They managed to leave discreetly before they were discovered, but they knew that time was running out. In their hotel room, they organized the evidence they had found. We need to act fast, Wei decided, already contacting his security team. They'll try to eliminate Taewon in prison. Yuna agreed, quickly typing a message to Ji-won. Notify the authorities in Seoul and reinforce Mena's security. She could be a target too. The night in Macau pulsed outside, indifferent to the secrets and conspiracies unfolding in its bowels. Yuna watched the city lights, thinking about how her quest for justice had turned into a race against time. Wei, she called softly, I think I know why our parents never exposed everything at once. They were trying to protect other people, other families who would be destroyed if the truth came out in the wrong way. Wei approached, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. And now it's up to us to find a way to do justice without causing any more unnecessary pain. The silver brush gleamed under the lights of Macau, a silent reminder that some inheritances go beyond fortunes and companies. They are about choices, responsibilities, and the courage to do what is right, even when the path is difficult. The tension in Macau grew by the minute. After discovering the threat against Taewon in prison, Yuna and Wei coordinated a complex operation involving authorities from 3 countries. The evidence found in the Phoenix room needed to be protected and, more importantly, lives needed to be saved. The authorities in Seoul have been alerted, Ji-won reported via video call. Taewon's security has been reinforced, and Mena is in a safe place with police protection. Wei organized the transfer of the documents found through secure diplomatic channels. His experience with international operations was proving invaluable. Jean Corporation has made its private security system available, he explained. Each document will be scanned and stored on protected servers in different countries. At the hotel, Yuna received constant updates on the situation in Seoul. Miho had volunteered to testify about the casino's operations, providing names and dates crucial to the investigation. His redemption, although belated, helped strengthen the case against the remaining conspirators. We found something in Macau's records. Mena communicated via encrypted message. My father kept a coded diary of meetings at the casino. He documented conversations that proved the involvement of high-ranking politicians in Project Phoenix. The discovery increased the risks exponentially. Yuna knew they were dealing with people willing to do anything to maintain their power and influence. The deaths of her parents and Wei's mother were silent testimonies to this brutal reality. In his hotel room, Yuna found Wei gazing out of the window at the city. Our parents tried to do this 20 years ago, he said softly. Now I understand why they chose to protect their families rather than expose everything at once. But we have something they didn't, Yuna replied, moving closer. We have each other. A network of allies and advanced technology to protect the evidence. The plan they developed was meticulous. While the authorities protected key witnesses, an international team of investigators began to unravel the complex layers of Project Phoenix. Each document found in Macau revealed new connections, expanding the web of corruption beyond corporate borders. Ji-won coordinated a significant transformation in the Kim group. The clean energy projects dreamt up by Kim and Jae 2 decades earlier began to take shape. The partnership with Zhang Corporation expanded, creating a new vision of ethical and sustainable business. "Your mother would be proud," Madame Park commented during a visit to the mansion in Busan. "You've not only uncovered the truth, but you're turning her legacy into something even greater." The investigation culminated in a series of coordinated arrests in several Asian cities. Powerful executives, influential politicians, and financial operators were exposed. The empire of corruption, built up over decades, was beginning to crumble. Tae-won, facing multiple charges, finally decided to cooperate fully with the authorities. His detailed testimony provided the last link needed to completely dismantle Project Phoenix. On a quiet afternoon in the garden of the Kim mansion, Yoona found an old photo of her mother playing the piano. Next to her, a young Jang Mei-len was smiling, their expressions revealing a friendship that transcended business. The image captured a moment of hope before greed and corruption stole their lives. Wei joined her, bringing documents that made the new partnership between their companies official. "I found the original plans for the clean energy project," he said, spreading out old plants on the garden table. "With today's technology, we can realize the dream they shared." The solar energy complex on Jeju began to take shape, combining Kim and Jae's original vision with modern innovations. The project has become a symbol of transformation, proving that legacies can be redeemed and dreams can transcend generations. Miho, after his crucial testimony, decided to make a fresh start away from corporate business. His experience led him to work with organizations that promote business ethics, turning his mistakes into lessons for others. Minna found his own way to honor his father's memory. Using his experience with documents and investigations, he established a foundation that supports investigative journalism and corporate transparency. On the eve of the inauguration of the solar complex in Jeju, Yoona found Wei in his grandfather's office. The silver brush rested on the table, its soft glow reflecting the changes they had achieved together. "You know," Wei commented, looking out of the window at the city, "our mothers tried to change the corporate world when it seemed impossible. Now we're realizing not only their dream, but creating something new." Yoona smiled, gently touching the silver brush. "Some legacies aren't about power or money," she replied. "They're about the courage to make a difference, even when the cost seems too high." The sun was setting over Busan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. At the Kim mansion, the orchid gardens bloomed, their vibrant colors a silent testament that beauty can emerge even from the darkest moments. The story of the Kim Group and Zhang Corporation has become an example of how companies can operate with ethics and purpose. Project Phoenix's legacy of corruption has been replaced by a business vision that benefits not only shareholders, but society as a whole. And in an office drawer, next to the silver brush, Yoona kept a photo of her mother with Jang Mei-len, a reminder that some friendships, some dreams, and some legacies are too strong to be destroyed by greed or time.